Ready? Pretzel day. Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today is the day I'm making German-style pretzels. So I do come from a long line of pretzel lovers. My mom loves pretzels. I have memories of like the pretzels at like the baseball game. Pretzels get their characteristic really shiny exterior with that almost like subtly soapy flavor on the outside from being dipped in a lye solution. So I'm going to talk all about that. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do at home instead because lye is caustic. And I actually would use it, but I didn't order it in time. So I have another way of doing it. And one reason I like them is because you get different textures. You get the kind of like thicker part, which is chewy, and you get the thinner parts, which are crispy. And yeah, we're gonna eat it with some, I don't know, mustard. So I'm just starting with some bread flour, water, some instant yeast. I have kosher salt for the dough, flaky salt for finishing on top, then a little bit of butter. To the dough, I'm adding an ingredient called barley malt syrup. That helps to give like a very particular kind of flavor to the dough. Our local grocery store had it. It's kind of hit or miss. I would call your grocery store to see if they carry it. If not, you can order it online, or you could omit it. Some people substitute like molasses. If you're using food grade lye, it gives like an incredible deep mahogany color to the dough and also great shine. The method that I'm using doesn't get quite as shiny, so I'm adding a little bit of egg white wash on the end, on the outside. For the dipping, instead of food grade lye, what I have here is 200 grams of baking soda that I baked in the oven last night. I put it in the oven at 300 degrees for an hour. I just spread it in this ceramic baking dish. You want to use something that's not aluminum, so glass or ceramic is good. Baking soda is a common substitute for home bakers instead of food grade lye when they're making pretzels. Again, it doesn't give you quite the same flavor, color, or shine as the lye. As Harold McGee wrote about, when you bake baking soda, it drops the pH even further, so this is an alkali. It behaves more like a food grade lye when you dip it. So when you do this, it does make the baking soda into a little bit of an irritant, so you can see I have it covered here. I'm not gonna touch it. It's not gonna like burn you, but just be careful because what I did read is that it will take off the coating on like your treated stone countertops. So I'm gonna just be careful with it here. I'm going to make the baked baking soda into a solution. So I'm gonna add water to this and we're gonna dip the pretzels. I then actually dip it in a fresh water rinse to rinse off a little bit of it. And that prevents the final flavor of the pretzels from being overly bitter. So you're not really like consuming the baking soda itself. Special equipment. I'm gonna use a stand mixer for making the dough. So like bagel dough, pretzel dough is really low hydration. So there's not a lot of moisture. It's not a wet dough, which means it's really easy to handle, which means you could do this by hand, but is much easier in a stand mixer. So I'm gonna go with that. I have a scale for dividing and portioning the dough. I have a little bit of a spray bottle because this dough is so firm that actually a little spritz of water helps me when it goes to shaping the pretzels. Obviously I have the ceramic baking dish. I have another baking dish behind me, which is gonna be like my rinse for when I go to dip them. Bowl scraper, bench scraper for just forming the dough and portioning. Pastry brush for brushing that egg white on it. And the last thing is a couple of sheet trays with silicone baking liners. And they're in the fridge because I have pretzels that I did last night. So you'll need those. You can use parchment paper, but that dipping process with the pretzels and getting the dough wet tends to really encourage sticking. So if you're using parchment, make sure you grease it really well. So the dough part of this recipe is really easy and fun. I'm gonna start by combining my dry ingredients in the bowl. Finally got a glass bowl. So I have bread flour here. You wanna use bread flour, something with a high protein content. For the gluten, it's Archie. He does that when Harris leaves. This recipe makes 8 kind of nice sized pretzels. Then I'm gonna add salt, kosher salt. Then I have a teaspoon of instant yeast. I've really switched over to only using instant yeast from Active Dry. It's so easy. You don't have to like proof it, which means like mixing it with liquid and a little sugar beforehand. You keep it in the freezer. It like always works. It's super easy. I added them to the bowl on opposite sides There's a kind of conventional wisdom around like not having your yeast come into contact with salt, but it's been debunked many, many times. Like it doesn't really matter, but I just kind of keep them separate because I just hear like the pastry chef from culinary school being like, don't let the yeast touch the salt. So I'm just gonna whisk that together, kind of make a little bit of a well. Then I have 270 grams of water. So that's about like a 56% hydration. And just for context, when I make sourdough, that's a high hydration style of dough, and that's could be like 80% or more. So again, low hydration means a stiffer dough that's really easy to handle. This is a 1.5 tablespoon measure. I thought it was really silly to get these like set of spoons that were like half measurements or like non-standard measurements, but I actually use them a lot. This is 1.5 tablespoons. It's like super stringy and sticky. So I'm just gonna mix this into the water. It's gonna help it incorporate. And you can see it like doesn't really dissolve that easily. So I'm just gonna stir it through. You could just kind of add it all together, but I'm so used to like mixing dry and then mixing wet. Kind of like doing it this way. So I'm gonna pour this in. I'm just gonna get this going on the first speed, lowest speed.
Oh, that's way nicer.
The glass, yeah. Sorry guys. So this is gonna go for a little while and I'll keep an eye on it. And we're gonna go until it's really smooth and supple. The dough will let us know when it's ready, but maybe like between 6 and 9 minutes or so. Do you hear the mixer? It's straining a little bit. You can like keep a hand on it or just check it every few minutes. It's not hot, so I'm not so worried about the motor burning out. And I have not increased it beyond the first speed. So I'm letting it mix nice and slow. That's just to preserve your mixer motor. You can see that it makes this really stiff dough. It's really fun to handle. It's not sticky at all. I don't have to add any flour to the surface. This is really well developed. It's like, it's firm. You can see when I press on it that it springs back. That shows me I have really good gluten development. I'm giving it a couple of passes by hand, mostly because I want to form it into a ball. So we need to let this rise. I started with all room temp ingredients. This is going to rise at room temp. It's about 74 in here, which is a great temperature for that bulk fermentation stage, which is now. So you can see here I have my ball of dough. I'm just going to get it in a bowl, cover it. It's going to sit at room temp until it's about doubled in size, and that'll take 1.5 hours, probably at this temp. Could be closer to 2 if your kitchen's a little bit cooler, or even closer to 1 if it's like really hot. So I'm gonna get a bowl and get this covered. Ah, sorry. So the dough has proofed nicely, and I'm gonna move on to the portioning and shaping of the pretzels. I have here 2 sheet trays. I'm gonna do 4 per tray. So the pretzels just benefit from having like a lot of room around them. So I'm gonna do 4 per. And you can, here's the dough. You can see it's expanded really nicely. It's about doubled in size. When I press on it, it's nice and airy. So I'm gonna get this out onto my surface. It's a stiff enough dough where I don't really need flour. All flour, depends on the time of the year, but all flour absorbs water differently. So if you feel like your dough is a little bit tacky, you can put a tiny bit of flour down on the surface if you need. Not now, Archie. Okay, so I'm gonna degas it. So just punch out those gases that have built up, and I'm gonna portion it. So they're gonna be about 100 gram portions. It ends up being like slightly more, like maybe 103 grams. So I'm gonna just divide into 8 pieces, roughly. Sorry people, he's totally fine. 100 grams and change, basically. It averaged out to like about 103 grams, 103, 100, 104 per. So now I have my 8 portions. I'm done with my kitchen scale. The first thing I want to do is just kind of gather all of this into a ball. I have no flour on my surface, so that's important because it's going to help me to build a little friction and create something nice and uniform like this. So I'm just going to quickly form all of these into balls, and then they're going to rest just for 5 minutes or so. What we want to avoid at this step is lots of proofing. So lots of, kind of generation of gases, because we don't want the final pretzel to be like filled with big air bubbles. So you can kind of pinch together the seams. And I'm not being so, I'm not forming them as neatly as I would if I were forming, for example, like dinner rolls or something. This is just a pre-shape. So now I have all 8 of these formed. I'm gonna cover them. There's actually another kind of pre-shaping before I shape them. I want to let them rest because I need to basically turn these into really long ropes that are like super skinny and long. And so they need to be able to relax so that they can extend like that. So these need to rest, but just for like 5 minutes or so, because again, we don't want to let them start to proof. Actually, I think the easiest way to do this is so I don't want to use more plastic. I'm just gonna do it like that. All right, so I'll come back in 5 minutes. So after a brief rest, the next sort of pre-shaping step is to get these into a kind of log. So I'm gonna take them one at a time, and I'm gonna turn the portions of dough upside down so I have that seam right here. And then I'm gonna kind of press it down really firmly with my fingers. You can really kind of manhandle this dough. Again, it's like not sticky at all. So I patted it down, and now I'm gonna basically use my fingertips, and I'm gonna roll, starting at the top of the dough, the part further away from me. And I'm going to kind of roll and tuck in this process. And when I tuck, I'm gonna tuck pretty firmly. And that helps me to get it into this shape. And I have this seam here, which you can then pinch. So then once I have that shape, I'm gonna roll it out. And I want it, like maybe 8 inches long or so. It's gonna start to spring back. So, we had that well-developed dough with a lot of gluten. So it's not surprising that it's gonna fight me a little bit. So once it starts to fight you, kind of leave it alone. And so the next step, so once I get them all shaped like this, another rest, and then we roll them out and shape them. So same process again, turn it over, really flatten it with your fingertips, and then you're gonna start that rolling and tucking process all the way. And then, so when you roll, apply a lot of pressure directly downward onto the surface with your palms. You want to try to get something relatively even, although when we form them, because we want to get that thicker kind of curve at the bottom and thinner little arms that then attach, we're going to have it be very tapered. So I'm going to continue that process for the remaining pieces, cover, rest, then the final shape. So after another brief rest, I'm going to start with the ones farthest away because those have rested the longest. And actually, it really is a good idea to keep these covered. You can see that they've actually puffed up a little bit, so they're kind of starting to proof.
Oh no.
No, it'll be fine. So I'm gonna bring over my squeeze bottle of water. We wanna get this nice rope into something much longer and skinnier, something even like 24 inches long. It's going to spring back, so just know that, but we wanna basically stretch it across our work surface. And the reason I have the water is because it's such a stiff dough that sometimes, especially if it has started to dry out on the surface, as it might while you're doing this, you don't actually have enough friction with the surface to get it to extend, so the water helps. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna pat this down and actually fold it in half again, and that's going to pop any large air bubbles that have started to form because it's proofed. So go ahead and pinch that seam really well. And now I'm gonna roll it out, and I'm gonna spray a little bit of water. Now, you might not need it for your version at home because maybe your flour, maybe it's like more humid or something. But for me, I need that extra friction that the water provides. So now I'm just applying nice even pressure, but I'm applying a little bit more pressure when I get to the ends because I want them to be tapered. So you can see, because it had a rest, it's extending relatively easily. Here I am leaving an intentional thicker portion in the center. And once it starts to really spring back, it's kind of just gonna fight you, so you're kind of done. There's gonna be a seam, so you kind of want seam side down, and you're gonna make it into a U, or like a horseshoe shaped, and then you're gonna cross again, and then you're gonna flip the ends down. Now this is a pretty small pretzel, and that's because we've done a lot of working of this dough, and it's not really going to want to extend. And by the way, you want to press really, really hard. So we can do some kind of stretching of the pretzel as we're forming it. And I'm going to place this on the sheet tray. And then actually I'm going to stretch it again. After it's had a chance to rest on this sheet tray, I'm going to kind of expand it and move it, kind of open it up a little bit and do it again. So I'm going to do 4 per sheet, and I'm going to just go one by one and keep forming them, and then I'm going to get all 8 on the 2 sheet trays, and then the 2 sheet trays are going to go into the fridge. I covered it with a piece of oiled plastic. If you have like a plastic proofing bag, you can use that. You just don't want something that's going to stick to the surface, so which is why I put oil on the plastic. But if you're using parchment paper instead of Silpat, do give it a coating of oil to prevent sticking. So I'm actually going to go back to my first tray. And now that these have been resting on the sheet tray, they've relaxed a little bit, and I can actually go in and kind of stretch them out a little bit. So I like to keep my fingers really firmly on that connection point, and I also actually like to flatten a little bit that fatter piece. And if you come across any air bubbles, go ahead and pop them. So you can see like a big difference in size. Firm pressure on that connection point and kind of pressing down on that thicker part along the bottom. I'm going to put that plastic back over top. We don't want to let them proof for too long at room temp. They're going to get cold. That dough is going to kind of slowly puff up overnight. So this is an overnight step. And then we're going to dip and bake them the next day, which will really just be soon because I made a swap.
And how long is too long in the fridge or too short?
You can fridge them for as little as 2 hours until the dough is actually just nice and cold and has stiffened up, or as long as I would say probably like 18 hours. I just want to point out that my oven is preheating to 450, and I arranged the racks because we're going to bake the 2 sheet trays at the same time. One in the lower third and one in the upper third. So 450, these bake pretty hot and pretty fast. And so I have my 2 trays of pretzels, 4 on each, in the fridge. And I'm going to make my dipping solution. So I don't want to freeze them solid, but I want to transfer the sheet trays to the freezer just for a few minutes while I'm preparing that baked baking soda solution, because I need to let them soak in the solution for several minutes. And the colder they are and the firmer they are, the more they're going to hold their shape. Check out the episode where I'm in Austin and I make tamales with Chef Rick Lopez, where we nixtamalize the corn. And that's another cooking process that uses alkali to kind of like process the food. So this is going to give that kind of more classic pretzel flavor. I'm going to put on gloves. I'm just sort of being very cautious. If you're using food grade lye at home, not only would I do gloves, and I probably wouldn't have any bare skin, but I would also put on probably like eye protectant. So like I said, this is 200 grams of baking soda. It was 200 grams before I baked it. There is some moisture loss, so it's not quite 200 grams now, but this is the proportion. It's like starting with 200 grams, baking it, and then I'm gonna add 4 cups of water. So one thing to be careful about is if you're adding water to the baking soda, you just don't want it to splash. I don't want it to get on my countertops because of what I said before, how it can like take off the coating. So maybe I should just do this on a towel. But again, this is not the same level of caustic as lye. So I'm just gonna slowly add the water. This is just 2 cups. I'm gonna add 2 more cups. Now, often when you see recipes for making pretzels at home, there's a boiling liquid, and you're boiling it with the baking soda. But this time I'm doing a concentration where I just need to dip them. So I'm gonna do 2 more cups of water. From my research, one thing you can expect actually is that this mixture might get a little bit warm, which is interesting. I don't really know why. A lot of science happening here. Okay, so I'm gonna pour really slowly. This pie dish is just clean water, and that's for the rinse. So I just want to make sure that this baking soda is dissolving. I think I'll probably only be able to fit 2 at a time in here. I have 4 per tray. And they need to soak in this solution for 3 to 4 minutes. So I'll probably split the difference and go maybe like 3.5. If I did this again in the future, I would probably do the water and then add the baking soda because it's like really clumping. I have some baking soda clumps, but I'm gonna go with it. So I'm gonna grab that first sheet tray out of the freezer, put the second one in, and then we're gonna go to dip. I have that oiled plastic so that they release really easily. They've sort of puffed up a little bit. They're really nice and firm, which is what we want for that dipping process. I'm going to put them into the solution and just kind of set a timer for 3.5 minutes. And I'm gonna put them in like upside down, like rounded side down. So I'll start with these 2. So these just kind of hang out in here. And I'm gonna get a little bit of paper towel to help just like dry off any little excess water that after I do the rinse. So it's been in for 3 minutes. 3 and now 15 seconds. So I'm going to transfer them. I'm using this fish spat to transfer them to the rinse. Maybe 10 seconds in the rinse. You can see that they are softer now because they've kind of more come up to room temp.
Is there any sense of like time pressure? Like too long in the bath or too long in the the rinse.
Yeah, you don't want to let them soften so much. So back on the baking sheet, and if you need to, you can kind of reform them. All right, so I'm going to do that second batch into the solution, set the timer again. And then once the second batch are done, and I have my first baking sheet all set, I'm going to throw it in the fridge while I do the second one. So we don't want to let it sit too long, and it's a kind of warm room temp in here also. So these are ready now for the rinse, 10 seconds or so. And you can sort of stretch them again back into that position that you want them in. These are now dipped and ready for that egg white and salt, but I'm going to stick them back in the fridge and then do the second tray, dip those. I'm also gonna get fresh water for the rinse. And one thing is, if you see any big bubbles, you wanna deflate them because you're not really going for, you don't want like an airy pretzel with big bubbles.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this one's really, these are kind of loose. Oh my goodness. I have here my egg white. For brushing, it's much easier if you break it up a little bit. I'm not using pretzel salt, which is like a real thing. You can get this kind of like large pearl salt. If you don't want to put salt on, you could use, I mean, why not treat it like a bagel? You could do poppy seeds or sesame seeds or something like that. And now I'm gonna brush them. Sometimes you'll see like a German style pretzel that has a slit in it, like you would slash bread. I'm not gonna do that, but I do kind of like the way it looks. Just gonna top them and bake them. This is just egg white. So egg white, it adds shine, but it doesn't really add any other kind of browning, but that's okay. I just want that shiny look. You can skip this, you don't have to do this. Traditionally, there is no egg wash on pretzels. It's not as sticky anymore, so I do like that the egg wash gives the salt something to adhere to. And I'm gonna concentrate the salt, I mean, you can do it all over, but I like to concentrate it for a more traditional look on the bottom curve. These are gonna go into my oven, which is preheated. Gonna have a top rack and a bottom rack. They're gonna go in and I'm gonna rotate them after about 10 minutes and they'll bake only for about 10 to 15. So after 10 minutes I rotated and then I set the timer for another 3 and that just went off. They look really good. I'm gonna pull them out. They don't quite have, and I knew they wouldn't have that like same burnished look as a lye pretzel, like a traditional pretzel, but they look awesome. So I'm super excited. So let's get them out and then they're gonna cool. You can see there was like a natural kind of slit that formed. This part is gonna be crunchy all the way through and this part's gonna have like that soft bready texture. So while these are cooling, I'm gonna prepare a honey mustard dipping sauce, something that would not be traditional in Germany. It's more common to eat them with butter, like a normal bread, and even sometimes like splitting the thick end and filling it with ham and cheese, which sounds awesome too. But I like my pretzels with mustard. So I'm gonna make that while these cool and then we'll taste. They won't take long to cool off because they're pretty thin. I'm gonna make a little honey mustard sauce. Now Harris at his restaurant used to serve a honey mustard sauce, so I asked him the secret and he said the secret is actually adding a little bit of yellow mustard. I feel like Germans would be like, that's not mustard, but I kind of like yellow mustard. And I'm gonna add a little mayo because this is a lean bread, so it needs that sort of bit of fat to make it into like a proper sauce. So then I have some stone ground mustard. I feel like it's better to use a whole grain, but I can't find it. And I'm just eyeballing. This is not really a recipe. Then a little bit of yellow mustard, a little bit of honey, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And I'll add a little bit of salt and pepper too. Well, I'm gonna do salt and chili flake because our pepper mills went missing. I just left it at a friend's house. Well, first let's take a look. This one near me is beautiful. So here's the back, not too dark. It's pretty light for like the surface area, for the amount of surface area. But when I like press on it, it's not like there's huge air bubbles in it. And that's really what you want. And then of course you get that contrast with the textures from like the skinniest part to the medium part to the thickest part. I'm gonna break it apart. That crumb looks so good. I'm super excited to eat this. It smells so good. I like that the barley malt syrup gives it that more tan color and a little tiny bit of sweetness. So I'm gonna dip it in my honey mustard. The outside has this sort of shell, very crunchy, but also very thin. Not overly salty at all. And I could definitely see eating it with butter. Very happy that we finally made pretzels on Dessert Person. It had been on my list for a really long time. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.